Well, every single week on the Fight Guys, Erik Apple brings you who I think are some of the most, relevant, interesting people in combat sports. And this week, I've stepped it up. I feel like once again, somebody who I think is kind of an unsung hero in the development and the prominence of mixed martial arts. Ed Soares, welcome to the show, brother.
What's up, Erik? How are you?
I'm doing really, really good. Thank you for asking. I'm glad we got some time with you. There's, I was thinking about the things we could talk about today. We could talk about whatever we want, but man, there is a lot to choose from someone like yourself because you were involved in so many facets of mixed martial arts as it grew to the position it's in now.
Yeah, man. I've been blessed to be able to be involved in the sport I love, man, and been involved in it since back in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, when the sport was really just beginning, and right after that era where they call the dark ages of our sport, where you couldn't even watch this thing on TV. You know what I mean? It was back then, you had to really seek it out. And people that were involved in it simply for the sake of just loving the sport and imagining it could ever get to the point where it is today.
Now, a lot of people probably recognize you or know you from managing Anderson, of course. And now the thing that I think of you most is being connected with LFA, your fight show. But let's go way back. I remember all access television show or something that you made. Tell me about that.
Yeah. When I've been involved in the sport even before that, but really just as a fan and, training jiu-jitsu with Royce Gracie and having my brand Sinister. But then we started a show called Passing the Guard, which
That's
was
right.
on KDOC. And this show was actually, it was a show that was in Brazil. In Brazil, it was called Passando a Guarda, which
Yep.
translates to Passing the Guard. And it was a show that was really about mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu. It was a magazine show that we brought to the U.S. And we started airing it on KDOC in April of 2004.
I feel old just mentioning it. That's funny. Now, is that the one that had George Brazil as the host in Brazil?
Yeah, that was the host,
Okay.
George Brazil. They know him as, and that's actually my business partner, and has been my partner ever since then till now. We're still business partners.
Is he involved in everything? LFA, Anderson, Sinister. Was he involved in all parts of your business?
No, he was involved. We started off partners with Tough Media when it was just basically producing Passing the Guard, and then we started representing fighters. So all the management side of the business, he's my business partner and still is. But LFA is, I'm strictly no, he's not a business partner in.
Okay. So let's talk about Passing the Guard a little bit. Now, that was like you said, the dark days of MMA before it was really that popular. So finding anything on television related to MMA was just so cool for everybody. At that time, I had just started, training with Marco Huas, so I was kind of around. But I have a question: was that show? Did you even break even? Did it cost you money to put this on for all the fans, or were you able to sell a little bit of ads and at least make it worth your time?
Well, actually, it's a real interesting story because I knew nothing about television at the time. And I remember going to KDOC and showing them the show. And the funny part is the show is I remember going in there with VHS tapes of Passing the Guard in Portuguese. And I remember they had kind of like how they had in school. If you remember back in the day, you'd have a TV set on like this metal roller, and they had a VHS on the and on the bottom. And I remember when I went and met with them, they wheeled one of those things in. I put the VHS tape of Passing the Guard, and I turned the volume down all the way because the show was produced in Portuguese. So what I did is I turned the volume down and I aired the show and just started talking over it. This is the show we want to do. And I remember the guy looks at me and goes, "Hey man, this is a pretty well produced show." And then he turned it up a little bit, and I go, "Yo, but this is the version in Portuguese. It's going to be in English." He goes, "Oh, okay," but he could see the quality of the production. And I remember him looking at me going, "You know what? How about if I do this? I'll give you a half-hour slot Saturday nights at midnight, and I'll charge you $1,000." And mind you, I knew nothing about television. I go, "Wait a second. So you want me to give you this show, and I have to pay you $1,000?" Yeah, I have to pay you $1,000. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "It's a time buy." And I go, "A time buy?" He goes, "Yeah. You buy a half hour time, and you put whatever you want on it." And I go, oh, let me think about this. Driving back from Orange County to my office in LA, and at the time I had Sinister, and I manufactured 80% of all the cut and sew for Charles at Tapout. I did all the cut and sew of Tapout. I did, and I called Charles and I said, "Hey Charles, I got this crazy idea." He goes, "What is it?" And I go, "I want to bring this mixed martial arts show to the United States. I want to do it on KDOC, which KDOC at the time covered all of LA County, all of Orange County, the northern part of San Diego County, and the southern part of Ventura County. And at that time, it was in a potentially 5.5 million homes. And I said, I want to do this show. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to time buy, which was 30 minutes. And I said, we'll do 24 minutes of show and 6 minutes of commercials. So we'll have 12-second spots. And I said, if you want to do this, if Tapout wants to do it, I'll do it. Sinister will do 6 of the commercials. Tapout will do 6 of the commercials and charge $500. And then Sinister will pay the other $500, and that's how we made up the $1,000.
Yeah.
That's how we made up the $1,000 to pay for the show. And I go, I have to sign up and do. I have to do 13 weeks. So are you down to do it? And Charles goes, fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And we did it. And by the end of the first season, we were the second highest rated show Saturday nights at midnight, because we were the only people putting mixed martial arts on free television. By that time, Dana reached out to me and said, hey man, what are you doing? I told him. He goes, hey man, why don't you start covering the UFC? And we were airing the UFC on Passing the Guard. So in theory, I mean, I don't know if it's 100% legitimately true, but we were actually putting UFC on TV before UFC had a television deal. So we were out there promoting, and that's how I started building this great relationship with Dana, is because we were promoting the UFC on KDOC before they even had the Spike television deal. They were only doing 6 pay-per-views a year. Yeah.
Now,
so
that leads me to, I want to talk about your relationship with Dana and management at Anderson, but I'm so interested in sharing. I mean, obviously I was there. We were all part of it, but I love sharing the stories nowadays about the clothing brands, the Hitmans, the Tapouts, the Sinisters, the Silver Stars. Fighters today, if I tell them how much we were paying people in the 2000s or 2000 teens, how much we were sponsoring guys, how much we were giving them, people today do not believe it.
Yeah. No, we were actually, I think we were the first one. Sinister was the first one to do a fighter T-shirt. And what we would do, and actually, with Sinister, I remember working with Chuck Liddell, and we manufactured the shorts, and we were the ones that came up with the icicles on the shorts. And I remember calling Chuck going, dude, you're the Iceman, dude. Like, we got to put icicles on your shorts. And he goes, well, dude, come up with it. And we came up with the design, and look what it became. It became an iconic thing. But we used to do fighter shirts, and I used to do a deal with fighters where I'd say, we couldn't afford to pay guys a shitload of money. So I'd say, hey, dude, here's what we'll do. I'll do, we'll create the shirt. We'll market it for you. And what we'll do is we'll take the cost of the shirt out, and we'll split the profits 50-50.
Yeah.
And we started doing it. And, but I'll tell you right now, the two fighters that I can remember back in the day writing huge checks to every month because of their merch sales was Anderson Silva and Chuck Liddell. I used to be cutting those guys checks every month back in the day of, anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 a month would be their royalties. And we were selling all their merchandise, and they were making, $250,000 to $300,000 a year back then, man. I'm talking back in 2004, 2005, of selling merch.
Back then, back when that money made a difference, right?
Yeah, back then I think even today, if you could tell fighters, hey, you're going to be making, $500,000, 300,000 to $500,000 a year selling your T-shirts, still to this day, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, it's, and this is a conversation for another day. I mean, we could have a whole roundtable about how the combat sports or MMA clothing business was just crushed and just died. Even though I'm starting to hear that places like Tilly's want these brands again. But it's amazing how we went from a point where we were paying guys 25, 30, 40 grand a month in shirt royalties, or as much as $60,000, $75,000 to wear shorts and hat for a shirt or for a fight. And then that business disappeared overnight, didn't it?
Yeah, with the sponsorship thing, but I understand it, and I totally, I don't disagree. I mean, one of the things that makes a lot of sense is like people are like, oh yeah, but money from the athlete. We're not taking money from the athlete. At the end of the day, you got to think about it. Okay, I'll give you a great example. Is like Shaquille O'Neal and Icy Hot, right? You never saw Icy Hot on his Laker jersey. You know what I'm saying? And the UFC doesn't limit, people say, oh, the UFC took all these opportunities. No, they didn't take any opportunities away from fighters. It's like this, the reality of it is that if that was the truth, then why wasn't Icy Hot on Shaquille O'Neal's jersey? It wasn't. And really what the UFC was saying is that, hey man, if you're gonna wear your brand, if you're going to have your brand on my show, you need to pay us. And I don't disagree with them. The times you were talking about was the wild, wild west of mixed martial arts.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Where it kind of anything goes. And if you were really creative with guerrilla marketing, you got a lot of exposure, for not a lot of money. And what the UFC is doing is saying, hey, man, you could go sponsor these guys. But the minute you want to sponsor these guys and wear your brand during our show, you need to pay us. And actually what ended up happening is it's such a long story to say that I don't think the UFC did anything wrong. I think they did everything actually right.
No,
because look at where they are now.
Looking back, I don't have a problem with it at all. I mean, it was also kind of guys were wearing anything and everything and kind of wild shit. I mean, what I was referring to more was the business as far as the sales. I mean, all the MMA brands got dropped like a bad habit at one point. It went from we were everywhere to no stores wanted to sell our stuff.
Yeah, it did do that, but also, you can't really say it's a fault. It's because the way retail works nowadays is totally different. Now the stores, everyone goes to direct to consumer, and when you go direct to consumer, it basically cuts out the middleman, and it's such a long talk, and it's such a talk that. I feel that I was very fortunate to be able to be in so many different elements of this business, from having a clothing brand before it was we had a streetwear brand that sponsored mixed martial artists, where basically a lot of these brands were built off the back of mixed martial arts. Our brand wasn't one of those brands. Our brand was a streetwear brand. We were in PacSun, we were in Hot Topic before mixed martial arts was big. So So the reality of it is that it's just, you have to evolve, and the business has evolved, and retail is much different today than it was back then. Back then you had to be in these stores. Nowadays, if you have a direct to consumer business, you don't have to be in retail stores.
Yeah. Yeah, you're correct. And I just think it's so interesting. I feel like I'm like, in a certain way, like a junior version of you, how I've been involved in so many facets of the game. And you might be the only person I know that have kind of more fingers and more spots in MMA than me. You know, you've had such a big part of so many things. It's so cool. I mean, we haven't even talked about, I mean, you managed the, you know, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, and Anderson Silva. And I wanted to ask, so you kind of alluded to it before, did that evolve from George Brazil's relationship with Anderson and you guys became close? And also, where did the Portuguese come from? Is your family Portuguese? Because I don't think you're Brazilian.
I'm Brazilian. I'm 100% Brazilian. My mom and dad are Brazilian.
I never put that together.
I spoke Portuguese before I spoke English.
I'm going to close out the show, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Fight Guys. Erik Apple. I always have someone interesting, and Ed is super interesting.
Anytime, brother. Thank you, and thank you for thinking of me. And anytime you want to jump on here, I would love to do it. We have so much stuff to talk about.
Thanks for being with us here on the Fight Guys, and we're going to see everybody next week.